Welcome to episode 34 of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hennig. On this episode of the podcast, do something a little bit different than we usually do. I'm going to have a guest on this week. You've heard him on 97.3 ESPN. He's co-host with Mike Gill. He's also co-host with me in a couple different shows. Ryan Rothstein. He loves the NBA. He loves the Sixers. And we mostly talked about the Sixers. We also talked about the NBA and some other things like sports betting. And it is the Mutant Blitz Podcast. I did have to also ask him a little bit about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and a little bit of his perspective as someone who is not who's not a geek like I am. So, and that's the whole podcast. It's me and Ryan just going back and forth and talking. So here is my conversation with Ryan Rothstein here on episode 34 of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. All right, joining me here on episode 34 of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. He came to me and asked me, hey, Josh, when can I be on the podcast? I said, well, how about next week? Well, now is next week. Joining me now is Ryan Rothstein. You've heard him on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. You've heard him co-host with me a couple times as well. And from what I understand, you have another new gig to add to your building resume. Am I right, Ryan?
You are right. First of all, thanks for having me. I begged long enough, and my wishes were granted. And I do have a new gig, so I'm going to be the in-arena host for the new Atlantic City Arena football team, where games will be played at Boardwalk Hall. So it's exciting stuff. Like you said, a big resume builder, and I'm looking forward to the season. It's going to get underway April 27th, so right around the corner. Nice.
Well, to the chagrin of everybody out there, we're not going to talk arena football today. We are going to talk.
That's fine. I'll throw all those notes out.
I want to talk Sixers with you because I know that you are a legitimate Sixers fan. You go to like 10, 12 games a year.
Yeah.
And here at the All-Star break, and for full disclosure, it's being recorded on a Wednesday night. So anything that happens in the Knicks game, we're not talking about, and we kind of don't care about either. But
right.
After the loss to the Celtics last night, everyone's got an opinion, everyone's got a theory, but I walk away like this, Ryan. This idea that there's this huge gap between the Sixers and Celtics, I still don't see it. If Tobias Harris makes 1-3 last night, he went 0 for last night. If the kid makes 1-3, the Sixers are probably winning that game. If Jimmy Butler makes a couple free throws down the stretch, they're probably winning that game. If things go slightly differently, they're winning that game. It's not like they were crushed by the Celtics. And I think that when you look at the Sixers team, they are now equipped. They weren't at the beginning of the year. But as of right now, heading into the All-Star break, they are now equipped to make a playoff run. Whereas before, if that would have happened to them with any of the previous iterations of this basketball team, yes, the Celtics would have won probably by 18.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I completely disagree with you, which should make for a good discussion.
Fine, that's perfectly fine.
Here's the thing. They were crushed by the Celtics. The reason why the score was so close is because the Sixers roster is much more talented. So, which we're not used to saying a whole lot, but insert Tobias Harris, insert Ennis and Boban and all the other new additions, but mainly Tobias Harris is the focus. He's the all-star. He's the starter. That's the big addition. But those additions and the Sixers roster, or their rotation at least from top to bottom, in my opinion, is more talented than the Celtics. And they're at home. So that basically allowed the Sixers to make it a game. Jimmy Butler was, I think, very aggressive when he needed to be. He played well. Embiid was a no-call, no-show. He did finally wake up in the fourth quarter and have a nice stretch of points that he strung together. But, I was at the game. And, listen, if you're watching it at home, there's not too much of a difference. Obviously, I get the feel of the crowd a little bit more than if you're at home. But
naturally,
overall, if you're watching it from start to finish on your couch, you're seeing everything I'm seeing. But the Celtics, listen, they have the Sixers number, in my opinion, right now, because, like I just said, I think the Sixers right now are a better team. They're a more talented team. They have more weapons. They're more equipped to make a deep playoff run at this time. And then that's why I'm so concerned, or whatever word I want to use, about last night. They completely took the Sixers out of their game. Ben Simmons, in my opinion, listen, if you just look at the box score, you're going to say, oh, well, he had a good game, 16 points, he had 4 or 5 assists. He's always going to fill the stat sheet. He's an all-star. He should fill the stat sheet. But when you're watching that game, especially in person, Ben was not Ben. Joel was not Joel. Horford, for whatever reason, owns way too much real estate in Embiid's head, in my opinion. And Brad Stevens, I know you and Gil, I'm sure, talked a lot about this today. I wasn't in the studio today. In my opinion, Brad Stevens owns a lot of real estate in Brett Brown's head. What their game plan against the Sixers, for whatever reason, is just an absolute Sixer killer. He brings Horford. He brings Horford typically out into the three-point line extended. They run pick and rolls directly at Embiid. They drive into the paint, ideally at Embiid. They kick it out. They swing the ball around the perimeter. And Josh, from start to finish, the Sixers were scrambling like chickens without a head on defense, without a clue on how to stop this. That was the entire game, in my opinion. And your argument or the other side of the fence is the Celtics shot 43% from three. They haven't done that all year. They shot the lights out, like you said. Tobias was 0 for 6. There was a lot of factors, but the Celtics shot so well because they got what they wanted on offense. They dictated that game in every way.
All right, well, but here's the thing, and this is where I'm going to jump in. First of all, I don't think you and I are disagreeing that harshly. I think that you're taking it from you felt the Celtics controlled that game from beginning to end. Us agreeing and disagreeing about that is not as important as the rest of the stuff.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I still think the Sixers could have won that game last night. And like you said, because they have the talent now. But moving forward for the Sixers, they're going to be a better basketball team because this is the third game with this version of this team. I have been saying this on the radio for a while now. Well, not for a while, but the last few days. And it finally happened last night. I kept saying that you're going to see a bad offensive game because these guys are still learning how to play together. It just sucks that it happened against the Celtics. It just happened to be against a team that can play good defense. That their offense, there was a pass. Tobias Harris threw it to the baseline, and JJ looks at him like, bro, I don't go baseline. I'm in the corner shooting threes. There was another play a few minutes later where JJ is expecting Tobias to be somewhere, and he was nowhere near there. There was another play where Ben Simmons was expecting somebody to do a screen, and nobody was there, and he was stuck. So I think this team is still learning how to play together. I think that's part of the reason why the Celtics could take advantage of them the way they did. But at the same time, I agree with you about something specifically. I do believe Horford does have something on Embiid. And part of it is because Horford does the one thing that nobody else in the league does. He looks at Embiid and says, I'm going to let you shoot. I don't care. I don't care if you want to jack up 8-10 threes in the game. I'm just not letting you beat me inside. And Embiid, instead of going to Ben and saying, hey, why don't we do a pick and roll? Or Embiid forcing his way into the post because he's a big dude. Embiid settles sometimes for those threes. And while I appreciate Embiid owning it and saying, I got to be better, I sleptwalked through the first 3 quarters of that game, that's fine that you understand all that. But what are you going to do about it is what's more concerning to me than anything else.
And that comment after the game to me really bothered me because Embiid, what's he known for? Talking smack. Almost, consistently, he's going to talk smack after a win and or after a big performance from himself. He's going to put something on Twitter. He's going to make jokes in the press, the post-game presser saying, I own real estate in Andre Drummond's head. I dominate this guy. They can't guard me. And you know what, man? Maybe I'm looking at this too harshly, but in my opinion, Horford owns him. Like, Embiid should have went up there last night and said, Horford got me again. And I'm going to, like you said, I'm going to figure this out. It's not acceptable. They had our number. They've had my number. They had my number tonight. And I'm going to figure this out moving forward. Because, in my opinion, I don't think he was sleepwalking through three quarters. I think he got owned through three quarters. That's what I think happened. And listen, you bring up, well, they're young. This game was expected, blah, blah, blah. The chemistry isn't there. I agree with all of that. I don't disagree with any of that. But I can't chalk up last night's game against the Celtics to just that. I think that was a factor. I think it was a small factor because they were 1 3-point shot away, 1 or 2 Jimmy Butler free throws away from still winning that game. And in my opinion, they essentially got dominated. So that's almost a positive takeaway. But there's more to it to me than just they're a new team and the Sixers didn't shoot well and Boston did. You know what I mean?
Well, okay, so if it's more to it than that, then give me one thing that you feel like is that more. Like, is it just the Embiid versus Horford factor? Is it the fact that this team has all of these parts that nobody, not even the Sixers themselves, really know what it's really going to look like? Or is it the fact that, let's be realistic, the little amount of experience by the best player on the team shows up in big moments? Or is it just that Brad Stevens and Al Horford versus Brett Brown and Joel Embiid is just one side? It's almost like I can't believe I'm using this analogy. It's almost like in a WWE tag team where you have a storyline where one tag team
it took 15 minutes.
Always beats another tag team. And then it happens for like 2 years, and one day they decide to let the other team win, right? Like they write the story that way. So which is it?
I think it's a lot of those things. I mean, the Embiid Horford dynamic has to be at the top of the list because Embiid's an MVP candidate. We've seen him dominate essentially every game. Is he going to have an off night? Sure, but I don't think last night, like I said, was just an off night. That's not a coincidence because he struggled for the past 2 years against that team, specifically against Al Horford. And Ben Simmons is a big factor too. Last night, he was not the Ben that we've seen all year. He didn't dictate pace of the game. He wasn't a floor general in any way. He didn't make anything easier for the Sixers offense. And that's his job. Like, he's still going to cut to the basket. He's still going to make nice plays. He's still going to have the dunk that you're going to see on Instagram and, on Sports Center at night. He's still going to do those things. But when you play a team like that,
let me ask you a question real quick.
There's more to it. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask you a semi-blasphemous question, okay? And I know someone's going to be listening to us have this conversation. As soon as I say this, they're either going to throw their phone or want to punch the steering wheel or wherever they're listening, okay? So I'm already warning people about that. Is Ben Simmons just too passive of an individual?
I don't think that's I think that's a very legitimate question. I don't know the answer to that yet, but the fact that me personally, that I don't know the answer to that yet, I think that's...
Well, I think it's a yes then.
Yeah, that's a cause for concern. That's what I was getting at.
Because the thing is that, I mean, you watch Ben sometimes, and he makes these plays there's only 5 other dudes in the league that can make. He makes some passes and some moves and he does things that literally there might be 5 other dudes in the league can make. But then there are other points in the game that it's just like, Ben, are you going to do anything? And it's almost like he's way too what's the word I'm looking for? He just
passive?
Not just passive, but he he defers too much. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yes,
He
does.
He looks at Embiid, and he looks at Butler, and he even looks at TJ. And he looks at everybody else, and he's like, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. And sometimes it's like, it's not about stepping on toes, dude. It's about stepping up because we need you to be that floor general.
I completely agree, and I was screaming about it all night last night at the game, and other people with me noticed it and were screaming about it too. TJ, this is going to be blasphemous, and people that are, Ben Simmons supporters and fans, they may not like this, but TJ, I think, was more efficient last night and more impactful on the game at times than Ben was. TJ was playing hard. He was able to get the team into their offense. He was distributing the ball well. He was driving the paint and kicking.
But, bro, TJ's garbage, right?
No, I don't think he is. I mean,
but we've heard that. We've heard that sentiment. You've been on Twitter. You've been out and about. Everyone,
I know.
There's this whole contingent of people who hate TJ. But yeah, when
Exactly.
TJ goes 6 for 6 against the Lakers and has almost every stat line better than Ben Simmons, the anti-TJ McConnell contingent is quiet, and then the Ben Simmons haters come out. And then when you ask them, well, who would you rather have starting, Ben Simmons or TJ? Both camps who are haters are quiet.
Yeah, and people are haters of TJ, in my opinion, because he makes Ben look bad at times. Because Ben's obviously 100 times better, more athletic, more talented, blah, blah, blah. And TJ is just, he plays hard, he plays smart, and he's not scared of moments at times, not scared of big moments, and he's really good in his role. He understands his role, and he borderline perfects it. Ben has to do more when he's on the floor than TJ does, and that can cause for more inconsistencies, more room for error. So that's where that stuff comes in. But I'm not saying TJ's better. I'm not saying I want to see more TJ. But the reality of it is, last night, in my opinion, he was able to do some things that Ben should have been able to do the entire night, and he wasn't.
All right, let's look past the All-Star break because I don't want to spend the whole podcast conversation with you talking about the Celtics game. But
I know, but we easily could.
we easily could. But moving forward, when you look at the 76ers, how do you have the Eastern Conference? Because to me, if you were asking me to rank the teams as of right now at the All-Star break, I'm looking at it like this. To me, the Bucks are the best team in the East. I think that Budenholzer has elevated that entire roster. I think Giannis is an MVP candidate. I think they're incredible. I have to be honest, my number 2 team is the Sixers because I think they have the best starting lineup, starting 5 in the Eastern Conference. I think their bench has improved what it was earlier in the year, and I hate what Toronto did. I think the addition of Marc Gasol is going to slow down their offense. It forces them to play a guy who's not flexible. Valanciunas was at least flexible with different lineups. You got to play Gasol X number of minutes or he's not going to be happy, right? So I think that hurts Toronto. I think it limits them. And I still have Boston at 4 because at the end of the day, the problem with Boston is Kyrie Irving. When Kyrie Irving's on that floor, they're not as efficient. He does a lot of ball pounding. When Kyrie wants to facilitate, that Boston team is almost unstoppable. But Kyrie, halftime, is more interested in being a superstar than he is in facilitating. He doesn't elevate Tatum and Horford. He makes them play his style of game instead of him acclimating to their game. So I think that hurts Boston as well. So I think that it's Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Toronto, and Boston. What is your hierarchy?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that you said. Milwaukee, to me, is the number 1 team in the East, regular season-wise, and I'll get to that in a second. They will, in my mind, lock up the number 1 seed in the East. Number 2 for me is going to be a fight between Philly and Toronto, and I agree with everything that you said regarding Marc Gasol. I think he is, he's a name right now. He's, at one point, an excellent center, one of the best in the league. He was able to do things that no other center could. He's 34 years old. He's slowing down. And I agree with
significantly.
you. I think that's going to negatively impact Toronto, him in that rotation. I really do. And it's going to be a battle between Philly and Toronto. I think Philly is going to edge them out slightly, and they'll get the 2 seed. Toronto will get the 3 seed, and Boston will finish 4th. If you're Philly, you're hoping at this point that Kyrie is in the lineup if and when you face off with them in the playoffs.
Absolutely, 100%.
Because I agree with what you said with Boston. And to take it another level, they're at their best against Philly. Not to go back to the conversation we were just having to open up the pod, but they are efficiency-wise without Kyrie, and they have a game plan specifically for the Sixers when Kyrie is not involved that they execute to a T. So if you're a Sixers fan, you hope that Kyrie's in that lineup. And outside of that, I'm not afraid of anyone in the East. I think it's wide open. With Milwaukee, and I want your thoughts on this, I think Milwaukee is playing great. They have the perfect pieces around Giannis. But when it comes down to it, he's the only star on that team. And for better or for worse, whether you like this or not, the more talented team in the NBA wins 9 out of 10 times, and he's able to carry them throughout the season, play hard every night. They have a deep rotation, but I don't see them being able to win 4 games in a 10 to 14 day stretch 3 different times. I think he's going to wear down. I think the role players are going to wear down, and they're probably going to have an early exit, I'm predicting, in the Eastern Conference semis.
Here's the thing with Milwaukee. I think, to me, I always say styles make fights when it comes to sports. And I think there's only really one lower seed that if I'm Milwaukee that I'm worried about in the East. Only one. Otherwise, I think, well, I'll get to that in a sec. But otherwise, I think that Milwaukee should be more concerned about the other top 4 teams than the lower 4 teams. The one team, if I'm Milwaukee, I'm worried about that I don't want to see, if Charlotte makes the postseason, I am scared out of my wits of Kemba Walker. Who the hell on Milwaukee is guarding Kemba?
And no one.
I can see Kemba averaging like 35 points for a 7-game series in Milwaukee losing in 7 to Charlotte.
You think he can do that 4 times though against that Milwaukee team?
Kemba is entering his prime right now. Just think about that for a second. You have a player who's a scoring machine, who's probably one of the most underrated guards in the league, a guy who actually is very selfless, and he really doesn't want to be scoring as much as he does. I remember watching an interview with him 2 years ago, and he was so excited his team was getting Dwight Howard, which sounds silly now. But at the time, he was excited, and he said to Rachel Nichols of ESPN, he goes, I have someone to pass the ball to. And, like, he said it like he was like a giddy child, like getting candy or something. Like, the dude legitimately wants better teammates around him. And if you watch Charlotte, you realize Malik Monk, every once in a while, he goes on like a tear, and Kemba just feeds him. Or you'll have a situation where, Miles Bridges starts heating up. He starts feeding him. Kemba's a guy, he sees his teammates and he recognizes, oh, Lamb is on fire, I'm going to feed him. And I think Kemba is dangerous for Milwaukee because Milwaukee can guard any team in the Eastern Conference except for Charlotte, because Charlotte has the one player that they can't guard. And don't tell me, I know someone out there listening is going to be like, what about Eric Bledsoe and Dellavedova? Oh, stop it. Please stop it.
Yeah, they're not in the same planet or ballpark than
it's not the same
Kemba
dimension.
is. Yeah, it's not even close. I think Kemba would have a field day against Milwaukee. I personally wouldn't predict them to beat Milwaukee in a series, but I don't disagree with really anything you're saying. I wouldn't be shocked. I would not be shocked if Charlotte took them down, because, like I said before, I don't know. Milwaukee's, they don't do it for me, man. When it comes playoff time, I don't see them having the stamina as a team to get through more than one more than one playoff series. I really don't.
See, I understand what you're saying, but the thing with Milwaukee is I look at them and I see the athletes they have. They have all that length. They have all that athleticism. Brook Lopez all of a sudden is the three-point shooter. Like, when the hell did that happen? And
I know.
I look at them. If I see Milwaukee versus Boston, I'm picking Milwaukee. If I see Milwaukee versus Indiana, I'm picking Milwaukee. If I see Milwaukee versus the Nets, I'm picking Milwaukee in 6 games because I can guarantee you the Nets will win one home game in that series. I just think that Milwaukee is a team that they present matchup problems. And outside of Kawhi Leonard and Ben Simmons, there's nobody in the Eastern Conference that has the length to deal with Giannis. And Giannis, to me, is such a nightmare at this point for teams. And when that guy's motivated, to me, Giannis, Embiid, LeBron, and Steph Curry are like the 4 players that when they are on their game and they're focused and they want to beat you, get out of the way, you're getting run over, because they're the kind of players that just can take it to you when they want to.
I agree. You know what Giannis is? I mean, you kind of just alluded to it, but Giannis is just a better, bigger, stronger, better shooter version of Ben Simmons.
Barely
more
better
aggressive.
Shooter.
I mean, he's longer. Yeah, I'm not knocking Ben. It's just Giannis is that good. Like,
no, well, I'm knocking Giannis down a size just because I've seen him airball a couple threes this year. So.
Yeah, well, he's shooting them at least.
Yeah, that's true.
He's not afraid to shoot them. He has a decent, touch outside the paint, and he can handle the ball. He can post you up. He's long, a great defender. He's a nightmare. That's why, it's obvious. That's why they're first in the East. That's why they have pretty much number 1 or number 2 best record in the NBA since the season started. They're a problem.
They have also one of the best road record, which is scary as well.
That is scary. And that's something Philly does not have. All-Star
break. All right, now I want to ask you this, because this is kind of like a generic basketball question. So I feel like the NBA All-Star Weekend is the best of the 4 sports. It used to be baseball. But baseball, nobody knows who the hell are on the teams anymore. Like, you turn on a baseball game, the regular baseball fan, unless you're a hardcore fan, doesn't know who the best 3 players on the Astros are. They don't know who the best 3 players on the Cubs are, right? Whereas in basketball, you know who the best player on every team is if you run into, like, the intermediate basketball fan. The NBA does such a great job of marketing their players, and you're taking the biggest names in the sport, putting them on the biggest stage, and these guys just put on a show. And I know the dunk contest is not what it used to be, but it's still fun. The 3-point shooting competition is always interesting because, when you have any combination of guys being competitive, it's just fun to watch. And then the Rising Stars on Friday night, I mean, you're basically watching the future grow right in front of you. I mean, it was a couple of years ago you had like almost 3-4 Sixers in the Rising Stars Challenge. So I think the NBA All-Star Game is the best of the 4 sports.
Oh, I mean, I completely agree with you, and I don't think it's even close. I mean, they do a great job of setting that whole weekend up. The game itself, last year was the best All-Star game I've ever watched, in my opinion. What year was it? Maybe 01. I forget the year that it was really competitive, but outside of that one year, last year was absolutely brilliant.
Really quick, the early 2000s were nuts, because then you had the one year that Iverson won the MVP in Washington, and then you had the next year where Jordan was sent it to overtime because he decided to go vintage and just start owning Kobe in the post. And then you had the year that Shaq's first year in Miami, and he just went nuts in that All-Star game. So the early 2000s were a lot of fun. The mid-90s were fun. Obviously, the one year that Magic came back for that one game was obviously memorable. But also Jordan's first All-Star game back after his first retirement was very interesting. I remember the one year as well in the early 90s. David Robinson had like a psychotic first half or second half or whatever it was, and people were like, what the heck is going on? Like, he went, like, he kept hitting every shot, and he was, like, dunking on, like, Hakeem Olajuwon and, like, young Shaq. It was nuts. So, but the NBA All-Star Game does have a history of, like, a lot of fun.
They do. It's a perfect mix. I mean, early in the game, it's a show, and then late in the game, if you're lucky enough and it's close, you get a legitimate game of the best 10 players in the world competing, trying to win. And then, the 3-point contest is a lot of fun. Very
Dude, I love the 3-point contest this year. I love it. Dude, it's Steph Curry, it's Seth Curry, it's Dirk. Give me all of it. I can't wait
to see Dirk. I want Dirk to win that thing so bad.
Did you see what Dirk said? He said that he needs an extra 5-10 seconds to get from rack to rack.
I know. I love it. They should give it to him. He said he's going to catch a nuke from Dwayne Wade.
Yeah.
It's awesome. What do you think? 3-point contest / dunk contest or the home run derby? Not just this year, but just ever. What's better?
I mean, if I'm going all time, I got to go slam dunk and 3-point, because the problem with the home run derby, while the home run derby is still a lot of fun and it's gotten good again recently, the problem with the home run derby is that there are years that you're expecting more home runs and they're not.
Yeah, that's
true.
And
there's been years that there's been years that, like, Jason Richardson and Nate Robinson are winning the slam dunk competition, and they're still good dunks. You know what I mean? Like,
legendary dunks.
There can be no-name people in the dunk contest, and it can still be a good dunk contest. Whereas I've seen home run derbies where, like, the biggest names in baseball, like an Alex Rodriguez or a Sammy Sosa the one year, like, because Sammy Sosa did the home run derby like 3-4 times, and one year he totally stunk. And one year A-Rod totally stunk. And one year Mark Teixeira stunk. And one year, the year that Tito Martinez hit 47 home runs for the Yankees, he didn't have a great home run derby that year either. So there's all these home run derbies that you're just like, Whereas at least the NBA gives you something. If the 3-point contest isn't great, the dunk contest is great. Or if the dunk contest isn't great, the 3-point's great, or whatever it may be. Like the one year Larry Bird owned the dunk contest, he could barely walk around. He still just owned all the young kids. It was great. So to me, I think the NBA just gives you more theater with their All-Star break than the other sports.
Yeah, I do too, and I'm slightly biased to basketball, so that's why I wanted your input on that. But that goes for the dunk contest too. But the thing with the NBA is they have the 3-point contest, like you said, to fall back on. But the dunk contest sometimes can be painful to watch if you get someone who's can't put a dunk down. That's
why they got to change the rules, Ryan. First of all, there needs to be two rules.
What do you want to say?
First of all, they got to incentivize the dunk contest. They got to make it so they got to do the dunk contest with the NFL did the Pro Bowl. The NFL made the Pro Bowl actually watchable again because what they did is they put money on the line. The NFL said, you want this big wad of cash, you got to win the darn game. So now all of a sudden you get to the fourth quarter and dudes start hitting each other. You have Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara coming off the edge on blitzes because they want to get a sack and score. Like, teams start going nuts in the NFL Pro Bowl. If basketball did the same thing with the dunk contest and said, hey, whoever wins, you're going to get $500,000 and a Bentley or something, right? Like, every big name player is signing up for the dunk contest. LeBron would even be in the dunk contest.
It's not going to be it's not going to be a Bentley. It's going to be a Kia.
Stop it.
I agree with you. The dunk contest, it's gotten better. Wasn't last year pretty good? I mean, I can't remember exactly.
Last year was fun.
Last year was fun. What'd you say?
Last year
was good.
But the other problem with dunk contest is you said it drags sometimes, and
it does.
That's the other thing. Does. Vince Carter brought up this point. I think it's a great idea. He said guys should just keep taking turns. So, like, if you miss a dunk, the next guy goes. And then the next guy goes. And they just keep going until you get your X number of dunks.
I like that idea. That's a great idea. Because it doesn't put the magnifying glass on the guy that's that missed a dunk, because that pressure builds, man. You're trying to do trying to do a creative dunk in front of the whole world and you botch it and then you have to get right back up and do it again. That's tough, and it's not entertaining.
Yeah, like, and no offense, I mean, it was fun last year, and I like Oladipo, but the whole, I'm going to go with the Black Panther mask from Chadwick Bosworth, and I'm going to go do this dunk, and then he missed the dunk anyway.
Yep.
Come on, bro.
That's one of the other problems. It's not a problem. It's just they're running out of dunks. I mean, we've seen it all pretty much. It's hard to go out there and do something that no one's ever seen before at this point.
But sometimes it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about just doing it better.
Yeah, that's true. Well, last year who was it? Last year or the year before? Someone recreated all the Vince Carter vintage dunks. That was great.
I think that was 2 years ago. But last year it was Larry Nance Jr. did a couple of his dad's dunks.
Yeah, that was cool. That was very cool.
And that was fun because they even showed the side-by-side comparison, who jumped higher on different dunks.
Yeah.
Who made it look better.
That.
That was cool. I would like to, maybe that should be another rule, that every dunker has to at least recreate a dunk.
That'd be a good rule. I like you, man. You're coming up with a lot of good ideas here for the dunk contest.
And I have no alcohol in my system either. This is incredible.
Shocking. It's really shocking what the performance you're putting on right now.
Speaking of performance, I know there's a lot of betting lines for the All-Star break. To me, I was looking at the odds the other day for the All-Star, all the challenges and everything. And I'm looking at the odds for the 3-point shooting and the dunk. There's a lot of betting value on Saturday night. If somebody wants to legitimately not spend a lot of money and if you have $20 and you want to split it 4 ways, you can potentially walk out of there with a nice return. I'm actually was impressed of how lucrative some of the odds are.
I'm curious to see how much the legalization of sports betting potentially impacts the All-Star weekend. Are TV ratings going to be higher? What's going to change? Because I agree with you. I think with New Jersey having it legal now and a lot of other states having it legal, it's changed how we watch and consume sports, and it just makes the NBA All-Star weekend that much more exciting to watch and makes people, gives people that much more reason to put a bet in and watch it. And just for $5, you get, $5 to have Dirk try and win the 3-point contest. His odds, I'm sure, are astronomical. Last time I checked,
I think they're plus 600 or something like that.
Yeah, it adds another dynamic to it.
You mentioned the sports betting. Mike Gill mentioned it earlier. I mean, you talk about over $300 million in bets were made in January, state of New Jersey, a month that's usually a rough gambling month for the casinos. When the sports betting came on board, look, you were working with us at 97.3 at the time. You heard the same thing I heard, and you and I look at each other like these people are nuts. People were trying to say that this wasn't going to make money for New Jersey. This isn't going to be that lucrative. It's not going to be that big of a deal. It's not
going to impact Atlantic City.
Right, it's not going to impact Atlantic City. It has had a major impact on the city. Now, it's getting to the point of oversaturation, but that's like any type of thing. When anything hits a market,
everyone wants a piece of the pie.
Right, and that always happens. But I love the fact that in the state of New Jersey, this has worked because I am such a believer in you can't keep trying to do the same thing and expect a different result. Like they kept trying to do the same thing in Atlantic City and it wasn't working. And I'm not saying that, I think everybody should go out there and gamble, but if you're that kind of person, if you're the individual who wants to throw down money on something, or you have the disposable income to get involved in it, and this is something that you would do anyway, or, I mean, I know there's people who have addictions and everything like that. I'm not trying to dismiss that, but I'm talking about specifically the people who they're going to spend their money somewhere, right? It might as well be right here in the state of New Jersey than flying to some other part of the country to get their quote-unquote fix in.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, it's not even – anytime you deal with betting or anything else like that where there's a potential vice involved, then yeah, who knows? It could be risky for certain individuals or whatever it may be. But overall, I mean, it's not even about the people that want to place a bet. It's the people that typically don't place a bet. They never went to their bookie on the corner in South Philly or in Brooklyn or whatever it is. Like, they're just people that it was never on their radar. It's legal now, and it's a great little addition to the city and the state. Listen, why should I go to Atlantic City? Why should I book a hotel room for the weekend in January or February or March in Atlantic City? Well, now you have a pretty good reason to do that. You have multiple sports books in town, a lot of them that are, classy, high-end places, fun places, and it's re-energized Atlantic City specifically, I think, big time. I mean, the numbers say it all, $385 million in the month of January.
It's a wild
just in
number.
Sports betting.
It's a wild number.
It really is, and it's great. I mean, for people like us who are from the area, and you can see the city kind of coming up a little bit.
Yeah, and also all the people who have gotten jobs because of the new casinos and the new books opening in the city. And look, I know I go to guys at the gym who I know about 10 different people who I will go to my gym who I see every week, who all have gotten jobs because of all the new opportunities in the city. And I like seeing people have better lives. I like seeing the area be successful. And to me, sports betting should have been here for a long time. I know you're a little bit young for this, but those who are older know that the whole fiasco in the 90s with the politics that got involved in it was so bogus and so stupid and so childish. I'm glad that it took about 25 years, but at least we got there eventually. So,
better late than never.
Yeah. By the way, if you're just tuning into the podcast now, which I don't know why you're jumping halfway into the podcast, but Ryan Rothstein is with me here on the Mutant Blitz Podcast, episode 34. All right, Ryan. Post All-Star game, I think everyone expects the Warriors are going to win the NBA championship, so let's not even ask that question. Give me who are some of a storyline, a player, something that you're watching for going into the post All-Star break.
What I'm watching for after the All-Star break. I mean, we hit on it earlier in the pod, but the Eastern Conference right now is dominating the storylines in the NBA, and that's exciting because for a very long time it's always been the West, and it's always been the LeBron show in the East, and good luck to everyone else. That's not the case this year. So to see those top four teams that we discussed for a good bit, see them battle it out to who's going to come out of the East in the playoffs, who's going to, how the seeding's going to end up. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm curious to see what happens with the Lakers in the second half with LeBron and the island of misfit toys that he has out there. And the Warriors, man. I mean, they're, for better or worse, love them or hate them, they're the story. How are they going to be able to repeat again? Are they going to, what type of run are they going to go on, if at all, in the second half? The Rockets with a completely different team now. Listen, James Harden, I mean, I know how you feel about James Harden. We can talk about that for a minute too, but what he's doing in Houston, to me, Josh, is, borderline historical.
Well, he's also doing it out of necessity. I mean, he was playing with garbage down there in Houston.
He's doing it out of necessity, but that doesn't make it any easier.
Look, it's impressive. It's impressive because he's doing it. I just feel like there are other guys who could have done the same thing. Like if you stuck Kemba Walker in that situation, or you stuck name Paul George in the same situation, you ask them to put up that many shots in a game, I'm sure they would score a ton of points too. I just don't think that Harden is so much more exceptional of a scorer than anybody else. Like if you swapped Harden and Curry, I think Curry would actually score more points a game than Harden has in the month of January.
Wow. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I can't argue against that. There's definitely a handful of players that I agree with you could potentially do it, but we haven't seen them do it.
But they haven't been asked to do it, and that's what's unfair with this conversation. People act like James.
I think it's unfair to downplay, what Harden's doing, because it's not easy, man. It's impressive. It's something that we've really never seen before. If we have, it's only really been with Wilt Chamberlain and, maybe Michael Jordan through a certain stretch of games, but it's never really been seen. I know it's out of necessity, and I know the game's much different now, but it's it's fun to watch. We can definitely say that. Well, at least I think it is.
We never saw 73 home runs hit in a season before Barry Bonds did it after he put the Clear and the Cream HGH on, but you know what? Sometimes circumstances allow for things. I mean,
yeah, that's touche.
Look, I just again, and I'm not dissing Harden, but I feel like there's this strong drive by certain people in the media who want to make. You got to respect Harden. Look how incredible Harden is, blah, blah, blah. And I love what Kobe came out and said. Kobe just straight up, like an assassin, just said, well, you're never winning a championship that way. Like, good for you, Kobe. Good for you just putting your foot down. And by the way, Kobe played on garbage teams. He was Harden before Harden was Harden. And he was like, oh, crap. I need other people to play with in order for me to win another championship, because me scoring 40 points in a game playing with Smush Parker ain't win nothing.
Hey, don't dog my boy Smush. I agree with you, but you know what I liked even more after the Kobe comments? What James Harden said. He was asked about it, and he said, he's right. He's right. That's why I'm curious to see how this plays out, because But
here's the thing. That's why I respect Harden. I just don't respect how certain people in the media are hyping him. I respect him as a player and as a talent. I just don't like the portrayal of him as he's so much more valuable than any other player to their team in the league. Like, I just don't like the fact that certain people in the media are focusing so heavily on Harden, but yet, you know who else is an MVP candidate? Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Paul George, Steph Curry. These are all phenomenal players. James Harden isn't the only guy having this amazing season.
Who do you think's who's the MVP favorite right now for you?
I would vote for Giannis. To me, it's either Giannis or Joel, because every game Joel hasn't played, the Sixers have been really miserable to watch. And Giannis, it's basically him and a bunch of guys who are good players but not great players. Those are my two leaders in the clubhouse.
I would love to see Giannis win it. I'd love to see the Greek Freak get it. I think he's very, very deserving of it, clearly. If they get the first seed, I don't see how he doesn't get it. But you can't sleep on Paul George. What he's been doing, particularly over the last 2 to 4 weeks, let's see if he can maintain it. That's going to be the deciding factor if he's even in legitimate discussions. But if he's able to keep this up with what he's been doing, I think he could sneak in there and steal it, or at least make it closer.
By the way, I was arguing with somebody on the text board today. You'll appreciate this. So they were trying to tell me that, Russell Westbrook is not as good as Kyrie. And I was trying to explain to people today that the difference between Kyrie and Russ is that Russ actually passes it to his teammates and Kyrie doesn't.
It's a minor difference.
Well, Russ leads the league in assists. Nobody else has double-digit assists. And I think that Russ is enabling Paul George to have this season, because I think he says, I finally have someone I can pass to who's going to make the shot.
I agree with that. Listen, Russ is the driving force of that team. He's been needing that KD, and Paul George is playing like KD was. I'm not saying he's KD because he's not, but he's playing very close to that level, and that takes a ton of pressure off Russ.
He's playing the role of what what you need to play with Westbrook almost better than Durant originally did.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's, at least it seems this way right now, that he's really learned how to perfect that role next to Russ. And they're running through teams right now. They really are. So after that All-Star break, I'm curious to see how they do down the stretch.
All right, so I'm kind of making an executive decision because this is my podcast. So
okay,
this is the Mutant Blitz Podcast. So I'm going to change direction on you a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So I know you're not as into it as I am, but I know that you do watch some of these Marvel movies, correct?
I do, yeah.
All right. What is your impression of the Marvel movies in general? Like, give me you're not a geek like I am, so give me your impression of the Marvel movies in general. Like, how do you feel about all these stories and these characters and everything in these movies?
I mean, I am the definition of the casual fan. Like, I will go to the movies and see them. I love them. I enjoy them. But, I need one of my buddies who is more of a quote-unquote geek like you are to, like, give me the comic book backstory, or, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have that knowledge. I was never into that. So, from a casual fan perspective, right now, I think it's awesome. I think they're doing a great job. I know there's some criticisms from people that have more of a knowledge and, an understanding of them. But for me, I would say it's at its peak right now in the movie industry, at least. And, maybe from someone like you, like a perspective from someone like you, that's not true, because you're more of an original fan, someone that's, followed it before it's gotten really big. Because I think right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they've been able to capture the attention of everyone and anyone, people that quote unquote aren't geeks, people that
absolutely
didn't follow Marvel 20 years ago. You know what I mean? So I think
right,
I think that's a big deal.
And that's manifested itself because Disney spent billions of dollars to buy 21st Century Fox Studios from them to get the characters like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four back into the main Marvel fold. You don't spend billions of dollars if you're not going to make that money back. And Marvel is making so much money off of these movies because people like you and the casual fan, you're invested now. It's the only thing that's comparable to this is if you go back and remember how people were about Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings movies. It became something that whether you loved it or you were a casual fan, you had to watch every movie you wanted to know what was next. And I feel like that's how people are turning into with the Marvel movies, which is you're not just watching it because they're fun and they're interesting, but you're like, well, what's next? Well, what's next? Well, what's next? And it's almost like Marvel has found a way to not oversaturate while keep you coming back for more.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, I'm completely invested. Any movie that they're releasing, I'm going to watch it at some point. Like, so, I'm a complete fan at this point, a complete casual fan. I'm not going to sit here and be able to get in depth with you on things, but I think they've done a great job. I think every movie is great, almost better than the next for the most part. I mean, there's some better than others, of course. But
naturally.
What's your favorite? Like, what's over the last 5-10 years?
Wow. Well, here's the thing. I would say there's 3 movies that stand out. I would say that the Captain America, the second Captain America movie with the Winter Soldier, I think that was so well done to the point that it didn't matter if Captain America was in the movie. It was literally just a thriller after a while. And there were so many big name actors in that movie, like Robert Redford was in that movie. I mean, it got to a point where you were just stuck to your seat. I don't think we can sell short how powerful and how well done Black Panther was. That movie was incredible visually. It was incredible script-wise. It was incredible acting-wise. And then I would probably throw in there, okay, so it wasn't one of my favorites, but I want to put on its relevance. How much Marvel has invested in getting Spider-Man back and introducing him back into the MCU hasn't just brought in another aspect of the fan base they didn't have, but has opened the doors for them to do so much more moving forward. Because if you don't know this, I'll let you know right now. After Avengers Endgame, things are changing. You're not going to see some of the characters ever again. Because some of these actors are retiring or their contracts are up. You know, there's a lot of rumors that Chris Evans might be dying in Avengers Endgame. So his character of Steve Rogers. So Spider-Man and all these characters have been introduced over the last several years. They're the ones going to carry the torch forward after April and May's Avengers Endgame. So to me, I think that there's a difference between what were the best movies and the movies that have had the biggest impact on allowing this to be what has become a billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting from someone like me who's just a casual fan, because they've done a good job, like you said, of keeping it afloat, right? Transitioning from movie to movie and figuring out how to eliminate actors who are playing certain characters. You know, I mean, it's fun. It's a fun time right now for all these movies.
I'll ask you the same question. Do you have a favorite movie?
Oh, man. I mean, the Avengers for me is the top one. Black Panther was awesome too. The Spider-Mans are great. Hey, it's tough, man. I mean, from a casual fan perspective, I'm not really able to decipher one significantly better than the other, you know?
All right, rapid fire. I just want a yes, you're gonna watch it, or no, why you're not gonna watch it. You ready?
Okay.
All right, Captain Marvel comes out in March. You gonna watch it?
Yes.
Avengers Endgame comes out the end of April. You gonna watch it?
Yeah, that's probably what I'm most excited for.
The next Spider-Man movie comes out in July. You gonna watch it?
Absolutely. Yeah, you know what? I was disappointed with Spider-Man over the past, I don't know, whatever it's been, 10 years. I just felt like every year they were coming out with a new Spider-Man. But the most recent, I think they finally got it back on track, and I'm back on board with Spider-Man.
Nice. Well, listen, Ryan, I know it took a lot of your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're in here Monday and Tuesdays on the Sports Bash. Congratulations on the gig with the Atlantic City AFL. And I know there's bigger and better things coming for you down the road. I appreciate you taking the time to join me on this edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast.
Josh, man, it's an honor. I was begging you to come on. I'm glad you made some time for me. We had a lot of fun, and 1 hour, we could have done 4 more hours. Flew by with you, man, so I appreciate it.
Well, we'll have to run it back when the NBA playoffs come around. How about that?
Yes, please. Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. Thanks again for Ryan for joining me on the podcast this week. Each and every episode, my perspective on the world of sports and the comic book, movie, and television world. If you enjoyed this podcast, hit that like button, subscribe. If you have any thoughts or perspectives on the podcast this week, you drop in the comments section below. I'm Josh Hennig, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Mutant Blitz Podcast.